podcast, the unofficial Arsenal FC podcast that looks to give Gooners insightful and lively content with a twist. Our mission is entertaining people and making a difference to mental health. Stick around later for our bold predictions. My name is Jason, and with me as usual is Paul. And in today's episode, we'll be rather glum probably, and we'll reluctantly be going over events from Arsenal's 3-3 draw with Southampton from last Friday. So before we get into it, how are you feeling, Paul? Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I think the last three games you can they've almost been like in a block themselves, haven't they? And we've come up against progressively easier opposition.
Yeah.
And so I think the further these three games have gone, the more depressed I've become. I said in the last one that you could kind of square off the Anfield match.
Yeah.
You go, well, it is Anfield at the end of the day. And I was still annoyed about West Ham, but if we move into how I felt pre-game in this one, I still felt pretty confident we would win. I just thought, in front of the players would rise to the occasion. Being in front of the home crowd at the Emirates, and I kind of felt that. I know history has kind of shown that Arsenal sort of screwed up in sort of blocks of games, but I did kind of think, this has felt like a different Arsenal this season, and maybe that's something to discuss, because obviously, the third game of that cluster, it was still bad. I was actually still feeling pretty confident, and I didn't think Southampton would be a complete walkover, but I still thought, they're down there for a reason.
Written down.
Yeah, yeah, and I also thought, they just needed the 3 points as a platform to take into the City game. But I felt the players would rise to the occasion in front of the home crowd. Annoyed about the last two games, but I was hoping that, there was a very clear lesson about taking our foot off the gas in the last two games. We didn't do that so much in this game, more take our foot off the gas at the beginning. But I still felt confident. I thought if we could at least get a win in this one, at least we go into the City game with in relatively decent shape, even if the West Ham result wasn't so good. How are you feeling? The same, you said?
Well, yeah, I was expecting a resounding win. I nailed us down for like a 4-0. I thought we would learn the lessons from the previous two games, and we would come out and smash the Saints. And as you say, there's a reason that Southampton are down where they are. It's because they're crap. And for us to come away with the game 3-3, I know we're getting into the ins and outs of the games, but we had chances to win it. But it feels I don't know what's going on. The guys, the boys, they're slipping, and obviously next up is the big one. So I was expecting bigger and better things from this, but wasn't to be.
So I mean, even with the few players we had out, you still kind of think there's enough there in the tank against Southampton at home.
Southampton, the bottom of the table. I mean, I think they're a little bit too far away from the teams above them to really try and get out of their situation. And they're crap. They're just crap. And we shouldn't. If we have genuine desires of winning the title, we should be at home. We should be coming out and steamrolling Southampton. Look at City's form right now. They are imperious. They are just. They are so efficient. The word I've heard thrown around in media of late is juggernaut, and they are just absolutely battering everybody that they come against, and they're doing it with such efficiency, and they're being so clinical about it, and that's what we've got to contend with. That's what we need to live up to if we're going to get over the line here. And I just don't.
It does feel like we. I mean, one bad result, you can kind of square it away, but it feels now that we're in a bit of a position where you can probably say it's a bit of a trend now, and we are now officially having, I mean, I guess you can look at it in the way that, we're still undefeated since the last time we played City, which is great. But then, I think we're not really going into this game tomorrow night in the rudest of health, and that's my worry. But certainly before this one, I thought, okay, this is a good game to have. This is the kind of game you want to build up a bit of momentum in. We've shown of late, particularly as well, that we've been able to break down those lower block teams at the Emirates as well. The likes of Leeds and Crystal Palace of late, Everton as well before that. So I still felt pretty good about this one. So I think that serves to make it all the more annoying, the feeling you have after.
Yeah. I think it was important for us to get the 3 points for this game because we have such a tough run of fixtures coming up. We've got obviously the City game next. I think it's then we have Chelsea at home, which you'd think we should be getting 3 points there. But then it's Newcastle away and then Brighton. So the next 4 games they're massive. They're really, really massive, big games for us. And
it's amazing. We've gone from just getting feasting on a diet of just win after win after win, and now it feels just changed so quickly. Sort of looking around now, I'm not saying I can't see us winning, but a win now just feels that much harder to come by. So but maybe Newcastle will be on the beach by the time we play them if they keep beating teams like it did Spurs at the weekend. So at least. And there's me. I was thinking, after the game, the Spurs fans sharpening their knives, thinking, "Oh, Arsenal have bottled it," and then Spurs do what they only do best—a gift that keeps on giving. They, 5-0 down inside 20 minutes or 21 minutes, and they steal the headlines away from us. So I've got to give a big shout out to those guys up the road this week because they've really done us a nice result there. So happy about
that. Yeah, I mean that was the only one little crumb of comfort I took from the football results over the weekend.
It's a bit sad, isn't it? Looking at what a mid club like they do, but you got to cling on to whatever you can when we've had a bit of a rough result.
Small victories, I'll take that at this point in time. So, lineups, we briefly touched on this. Xhaka was out ill. Vieira came in. Saliba was still out, back. No return date, and I think the rumours now are that he's possibly going to be out for the season. I think you probably read that as well, that's massive because we have not looked the same defensively since he's been out.
We haven't,
from a defensive perspective, and also the ability to play out from the back. It's not the same. I think I saw one statistic that said 30% less chance of us winning when he's not in the team, sort of thing, and that's worrying.
I would say people though would sort of joining 2 and 2 together and getting 5. Just I think there's 2 things here when I'm talking about Saliba and Holding, because Holding seems to be the lightning rod at the moment for a few people's frustrations, and people are saying, well, it's because Holding's in and it's all bad. Actually, Holding to me has been quite good. But the second, I think you can actually almost pull apart the 2 notions of we suffer without Saliba in the team versus it's all Holding's fault. Because I think, yes, we do suffer more when Saliba's not there. You'd obviously rather have him there, but I don't think Rob Holding's actually been. I still think people have got this bias around that performance in the North London derby away last season, to be honest, because if you look at Gabriel of late, he's gave away the penalty against West Ham. He was sleeping along with Zinchenko for Southampton's second goal, and he's actually looked a lot more jittery. I mean, again, maybe you can say it's because Saliba's not there, but for me, Saliba brings an aura of calm to the team. Whereas Gabriel's the one that's a little bit more excitable, shall we say? And it's funny. It's funny how there's sort of certain players sort of have more credit in the bank in certain players' eyes. Because for me, if I had to do just like if I knew nothing about the past, I had to look at both these centre halves, I'd say that Gabriel was like the reserve choice one coming in to do a job. To be honest, because I think he's been very bit ordinary. He's had real lapses in concentration, but to your point, I think missing Saliba, absolutely. It's just that calm assuredness at the back. And when he came off against Sporting, I saw him walking off unaided. he didn't. It would look like he was walking off more gingerly. To be honest, I'm really gutted that it now looks like he's going to be out for the season. But the good thing about it, I suppose, is that it brings clarity to the players that are in that position. Like Rob Holding now knows that he's got 7 games or whatever it is to like, this is his time now. You know, we've had Reece Nelson have his moment this season. We've had Fabio Vieira at the start of the season having his moment off the bench, and some of these fringe players, to win a title, they're going to have to step up. And Rob Holding did it in the 2017 FA Cup final. Pocketed Diego Costa, and I certainly think he's capable. I think he's going to find it when the opposition's hard. Like, it's going to be tomorrow night. He is going to find that a challenge. But I think he actually acquitted himself quite well against City in the FA Cup game. To be honest, I actually don't really remember Haaland getting much of a sniff. I mean, there's a bit of wrestling going on again. He was a bit jittery at the start, Holding, but I think he was up for the challenge physically. I think the key thing is, just to be alert to that clever movement inside the box. I mean, jumping ahead of ourselves. But yeah, I'm going to basically fly the flag for Rob Holding a bit on this pod, because I want Arsenal fans to just really use what they're seeing with their eyes and realise that players come in and out of form. It's lazy almost to sort of look at what the media are saying and follow that, because I think there's a bit of that going on there. But I think he's been fine, to be honest. I mean, yeah, I'd love to have Saliba there, but I don't think Holding has disgraced himself by any stretch.
I agree. I don't think he has disgraced himself, but I just think that we're a different team, both defensively and offensively, when we have 2 players that, in my mind, they're very similar molded players. They're a bit more of the sort of old school physical type defenders, the Gabriel and the Holding. In some ways it's a shame that maybe Tomiyasu's out, because I could almost, if Tomiyasu was available, you bring him in, and then maybe Ben White could come in the centre a bit more. And then you've got that old dynamic that we had before Saliba was here, where, you had Ben White and Gabriel alongside each other, and they complemented each other well. I just think that Holding and Gabriel together, they don't necessarily complement each other. They don't. The styles of play are very similar, and so you haven't got that balance, I think, and that's not a slight against either of them. It's just the facts. The game is what it is.
I think the thing I've noticed with watching Arsenal recently is that Rob Holding, for me, is the kind of guy who, the one area he definitely does lack is that he doesn't have a lot of recovery, a lot of pace.
Yeah.
So Arsenal are having to play. I think with Saliba in the team, you're able to play a higher line, because obviously if the ball then does come over Saliba's head, he's got the ability to turn and then have that recovery pace to get back. But I've noticed Arsenal of late have started to sort of all as a collective shrink back 5 to 10 yards close to their goal. I've seen Thomas Partey dropping in at centre half a little bit. I've seen Jesus dropping in almost to the halfway line a lot more than he probably otherwise would, and that's affecting. I think as a team, that's affecting our ability to. I mean, it's ironic because we did score 3 goals, but I feel that that's probably stopping us from kind of getting up the pitch and being as effective in the final third. I think Saka and Odegaard have been, even though again they scored the other night, but they've probably not been as effective. They've probably not had as much quality possession in front, in the final third, because the team are probably having to readjust for that. But in terms of team news from my side, I mean, it was obviously great to see Zinchenko past fit.
Yeah.
To start, when I saw Xhaka there, I was like, oh my god, not another bloody injury. But then, obviously heard that it was more of an illness thing, which can kind of happen. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't have gone for Fabio. I mean, you might say, Fabio Vieira can unlock, he's probably the kind of right type of player to play at home against a team fighting relegation, because he can probably pick the lock with a clever pass or a shot or something like that. So, but I think he's been pretty ordinary when he has played in the last couple of months. And but to be honest with you, I wasn't surprised Arteta picked him, because I think Arteta seems to be a fan. He seems to be. He's got his favourites, as any manager does, and I actually wasn't surprised to see Fabio Vieira start there. Although personally, I don't think he necessarily deserves to start. To be honest with you,
I think you and I both sort of agree that he's been pretty ordinary. I mean, I think he's a bit lightweight. I don't think he's ready for the sort of physical element of the Premier League. I would have preferred, why not put Smith Rowe in at that point? That would have been the perfect chance. I will say this in Vieira's defence, had we come out and commanded the game as we all thought we would, and we were 2-0 up or whatever, I think he would have been able to get more into the game. But where we needed to grab and chase and hound and get back into things, I don't think that style of game then suited him. So I think he then got lost in everything basically. So yeah,
I think he gets lost. I mean, yeah, he has had his contributions this season. It hasn't been a disaster. I think hopefully next season he'll beef up in the gym, and we might see him progress next season. I hope so, because he didn't come cheap as well. We've got to remember we paid over 30 million for him, but I just think in some games he does go missing. I'd love to see him, because he does have a good touch. He does look like he's got ability there, but I'd love to see him really take the game by the scruff of the neck a bit more, to be honest, because I think he just lets the game pass him by. And in that position, you've got to be the main guy who wants to receive the ball and dictate and sort of run the game, rather like Odegaard does when he's in top form.
Yeah. So the rest of the lineup sort of picked itself. The only ones really to note were Xhaka, Saliba, Holding's back in, Zinchenko's in. The rest of it sort of picks itself really. I mean, let's get into the game. I don't know. Wow.
I know. You say you don't know. I bloody well know.
I mean, I do know, but what an absolute clanger from Ramsdale. I mean, what? And then, to make it slightly worse as well, I thought that he could have possibly saved it as well, because he got a good to it, and it sort of went off on the inside of the post.
It was a bit limp-wristed, wasn't it?
And it's, I mean, given that the saves he made over the last couple of weeks as well, I'm thinking back to the Anfield game as well, where he pulled up some worldies of a save. I mean, the nerves, they've really got the better of him there to play that shaky, dodgy pass. Within, what is it, 30 seconds, something like that, 20 odd seconds, and then it's just, I mean, it sets the tone for the rest of the game then.
That's exactly it.
The whole team then are like, oh fuck, they're all nervous. Then they're like, right, we're gonna get back in front, and then by doing that, you sort of leave yourself open. You're chasing it straight away from the get go.
Yeah, it has that ripple effect, doesn't it, to your defenders with it, and the team, where maybe the defenders are wanting to sort of defend a bit closer to their goal. And people always talk about the passing out from the back and being risk versus reward and things like that. But when you see that goal, that pass was never on.
No,
Rob Holding was standing just to his right. He could have taken that ball with a little bit more time and maybe fed it out to Ben White and built up on the right hand side. But and I've heard people say, oh, but on another day that ball finds Zinchenko, and Arsenal plays through, but that pass was never on. I mean, and people say this is like a consequence of the way football's played these days. But I don't mind players trying things a bit risky when there's nothing else on, but when there's I don't know if Rob Holding didn't look like he was really calling for the ball, to be honest, at that point. But I'd love that ball just to be, popped off to the side, and maybe we could look to build down the right flank. But what a absolutely abominable start to a game,
or a show of a start. And I just sat down. I was like, right, okay, come on, we're gonna do this. The TV on, and it was just, I was like, oh, this cannot be happening. It was just, awful. And then to make matters worse, just going forward a little bit, like 14 minutes gone, we get carved open, and ball given away by Odegaard, but really, I don't blame him so much. I mean, it was a poor pass, but he had to do it quite quickly, and that was as a result of Partey again being silly in possession. Now, I don't know what's happened to Thomas Partey, but he's just he's gone walkies in the last few games. I don't know. He's nowhere to be seen. He did the same sort of clanger at West Ham where he was trying to be all clever and dink the ball over Declan. See, I got the name right this week. What is going on with this guy? He's not the same player he was, I guess, before the international break. He's not. It's unbelievable. And then the ball through and Walcott, good old Walcott, and did his typical thing and peeled off the back of Gabriel, I think it was, and slid the ball in the back of the net. I mean, credit to him, he didn't celebrate.
Switches off as well.
Does he?
I don't actually. That whole celebrating against your former team thing, I think it's nonsense. If you score a goal, you should be able to show joy. He was a good servant for us. But anyway, that's my view. I'm not this. I think it's so ridiculous. I wouldn't expect him to go with the Arsenal fans. If he wanted to do a little fist pump and celebrate with his teammates and smile a bit, I'm happy with that because he plays for Southampton. But people seem to get offended by that. But I think it was a good ball through the midfield. He did kind of catch us a bit cold, and it was the classic sort of Walcott finish. But again, we seem to sort of the ball seemed to sort of come. What I did notice between the first and second goal, there was a lot of times where we had a lot of the ball. Again, we didn't create. Maybe I'm being a bit too demanding here, but I didn't feel like we were really had our hands around their throats. But whenever Southampton did get on the ball and counter us, it just looked so easy and open. I mean, the midfield, I don't know whether that's because Partey was dropping deeper to kind of help with the defensive role rather than play the game he's been playing. But I noticed Southampton were able to get on the ball, drive through our midfield, dribble through the midfield without even, and pretty much be kind of, not in on goal, but sort of, pushing in and around our box basically quite easily. And I was shocked by that.
I saw the same thing, and I've written down the same thing. We essentially lost the midfield battle for pretty much the majority of the game. It wasn't until very late.
It was like we didn't have anyone in the midfield to have a battle with them. That's kind of what it looked like to me.
They all went missing, and I think, because we were chasing it, and this comes back to my point I was making earlier, I think Vieira wasn't the right player to have in that moment in time. But, in that instance, I think he's a victim of the circumstances. He's not that kind of player to go running around, trying to win the ball back, 50-50. He's not that player. Whereas Xhaka would have been. And I think, he would have had more about him, and, I think he would have shown a bit more leadership in that moment, and provided a bit more of an assured anchor, if you like, alongside Partey and Ødegaard. But I was
quite surprised how adventurous Southampton played, to be honest, because they certainly weren't there just to sort of fill the box with 10 outfield players and just kind of head out crosses for the entire game. They when they did get the ball, there was purpose. It wasn't like they were just low blocking. It was like a mid block, decent on the transition. Alcaraz up front. I nearly said Alcatraz, but I'll stick with Alcaraz. They had the outlet, and to be honest with you, I would have had 20 quid with you that the Walcott would have scored. We're just that kind of team, aren't we, that can see those kind of goals. But we were strangely open, and that second goal just made me think, right, when you can see one after less than a minute, you think, okay, that's obviously annoying, but it might give us the wake up call. But when they get that second one, the first thing I'm thinking is, okay, we're in for something here now. This is not going to be. Best case scenario for me is almost like a game of basketball that Arsenal squeak over the line in. But all of those notions at that point of a nice, comfortable 3-0 victory just go out the window, and strap yourselves in. The anxiety and the tension, the kind of games that Man City don't seem to get themselves involved in. I think that's probably an area where you have, like, when you look at, maybe again, I don't want to sound negative, but when you're looking at who's going to potentially win the title, we are the team that is having to kind of bail water out of our ship every now and then and try and get over the line in games in a tense way, whereas Man City, it's it's almost third gear,
It's easy for them.
threes and fours. Yeah, so that does make me think. You can do it every now and then, but in this game we just kind of came up short really. But we did hit back. It was good to get that goal in the first half. I think if it got to half time at 2-0, different story. Maybe we would have lost the game, to be honest. But I think Saka again had a fairly quiet first half, but good work by him. And the cutback was a little bit behind Martinelli, but to me that made the finish even more impressive. He's almost felt for the ball. He's not sort of had to watch it onto his foot. He's had to kind of turn and kind of really bring his body around and whip. It was a good finish. It was a good finish, and it was great to get back in the game.
I thought Martinelli was the only one really that sort of had that impetus in him to drive and that determination to make things happen. Saka a little bit as well. But yeah, I mean, it was a great finish from Martinelli. Great volley. It was just really good play. But then not long after that, again, defensive lapses and poor play. Saints had a double chance, and back post. I think Ramsdale. I mean, he makes a hash of the first save. I mean, he had a pretty off day, I think, Ramsdale, when we played against Southampton. He made a hash of the save, and then he sort of gifted another chance, and then he had to make another save. And in some ways, I think we're creating our own downfall here with these mistakes and these lapses of concentration that just put us in a bad situation, and then we're having to sort of react quickly to this. And I mean, we got out of it on that one, but it could have been so much different. And I just think that we can't be doing this. If we've got genuine desires on the title, we cannot be fluffing around with the ball like this. It's ridiculous. But anyway,
I mean, the thing with Ramsdale is I'm not going to dig him out because he single-handedly saved us a lot in the last games. But and plus the other thing to look at it is that why you have to ask yourself, why is Ramsdale being called into action like this? Is because he's not got as much solidity in front of him anymore. So he's having to be dragged in. He sort of presented the second opportunity and then saves the second one. But he's been called into action a lot more than he should be, to be honest, at this point. So to me, it's still symptomatic of the fact that as a team, we're not, we've stopped winning the ball higher up the pitch. We've got a one-man midfield, and I think when Partey's off form, it really shows. But when he's on form, it's obviously it's a springboard to us being a great side. But with all of these things kind of combined, a few injuries at the back, Zinchenko missed the last one, probably all contributing, and then that's obviously in turn putting more pressure on Ramsdale to try and keep things tight. But we did start to create a few chances. I mean, again, it was that kind of game of basketball where there were chances for them, and the other one was Ben White, that header from the corner, superb sort of flicked header to the far post, and Alcaraz
off the line.
That was super close, and
gone in 2-2 then at half time, and then you kind of like, okay, first half didn't happen, we can reset, but it was just so annoying that didn't go in. There was another chance quickly just before that as well. There was a Gabriel Jesus chance where Saka played him in on the side. It was a clever little ball, clever timed run as well by Jesus, and he was through on goal. I say through on goal. It was a very tight angle, but I don't know. I mean, in this game particularly, Jesus seemed very inconsistent, not clinical enough. He just sort of hit it at the goalie. But yeah,
what's your take on Jesus? Because there's a bit of me at the moment that thinks he looks a little bit fatigued. He looks like, I remember when he came back against Fulham, he looked unbelievably razor sharp, like he'd never been away. But I did notice that I don't know whether it's just a bit of a toll of sort of coming back and almost hitting the ground running in this title run. He hasn't really been eased back in. He's had a half against Fulham, and then it felt like he'd basically been starting ever since. But what are your sort of takes on that? Because I sort of felt like
he's been on good. He's been putting the ball at the back of the net, which is, that's what you need to do as a striker. But his game is more than that. He pulls players out of position. There's a bit of interchange play going on with him and Martinelli. They mix it up a little bit, and he pulls out wide and he comes deep. I don't think that he is. I don't think he's clinical enough in front of goal for. I mean, that this is evident.
He never has been, though. To be fair,
I know, but then
even in the past, he's not been. He's not someone you'd stake your mortgage on.
I know, but
running through one-on-one.
There are chances, and then there's chances. Like, I mean, we're going to jump forward a little bit here, but there was a golden opportunity in the second half. A lovely little dink, clipped ball. I think you know the chance where Martinelli sort of clipped it over, went over the defender's head, and he comes onto it, perfect timing, and it goes over, and full well that if that's a City player, that ball gets in that net. Any of the sort of forward line players that are on the end of that's going in, and I think if that ball goes in, it changes the game completely. It's So my overall impression of him is he's brilliant. I love him. I think he's great, and I think he works very well in the setup that we've got. But I don't think he's clinical enough in front of goal.
I agree. But the issue I've got with him in this game is because he did look that bit more fatigued from what I could work out. What then suffers is that build-up play then suffers a little bit as well. So you sort of get him, because I expect him to have, I don't expect him to finish the chance that a prime Aubameyang or an Ian Wright or an Henry would do. But what I do expect is, when he is sharp, he is going to be creating opportunities, dropping into little spaces and knitting things, drifting out to the left, little 1-2s, get into the box. And I just felt a lot of that was kind of missing. And obviously he got on the end of a few things in front of goal. But yeah, I felt like Martinelli was probably the only forward player we had that really sort of fired for most of the evening, to be honest, especially in the first half.
Yeah.
And and I think that's where we've seen maybe Jesus not being quite on it. Is kind of, it's a harsh thing to say on a guy to give him the responsibility of other people's games. But I think sometimes when he's not on it and Odegaard's not on it, suddenly Saka then doesn't come into the equation as much because Odegaard's not combining with him and Jesus isn't combining that well with Martinelli. So he's kind of almost out of the game. And suddenly your attack sort of breaks down. It almost feels to me at the moment that the attack's either all firings are 4 or it's not firing, and it is this like maybe one out of the 4 is playing well, and then another guy comes good. A few weeks ago, everyone was firing.
They were a lot more consistent a few weeks ago, whereas now I think they're dropping off a little bit. Now, whether that's down to nerves, whether that's down to fitness, I know we've got a bit more depth in the squad, but we said it at the beginning of the show here. The team picks itself really at the moment, and maybe there's, maybe we need to mix it up a little bit. But so first half, came to a close after the Ben White chance. We go in 2-1 down. We're expecting a response in the second half, and not much really happened as so far as I remember until the 66th minute when Southampton had a corner, and quite honestly it was awful defending, and Zinchenko completely lost his man. It was nowhere to be seen. I mean, the flick on header, and then this guy Caleta Carr just sort of waltzes in at the back and gets his bean on it, and then it's all. And then we're staring down the barrel then at 3-1, and I'm thinking, oh no, this is done. It's done.
Yeah.
Finished.
What I did know, I mean, that sort of first 15-20 minutes of the second half were completely forgettable. Yeah, I think. But what I did notice in the first half, because Southampton did look like they were coming out to try and play in transition and try and counter. It seemed like the whistle went for the second half, and Southampton just retreated back, gave Arsenal the ball, and then but again, we had lots of possession, knocking it around, putting together 15 passes at a time. But
But there was
zero
penetration, was there? There was nothing. There was no sort of killer ball. It was very safe and very easy to sort of play. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about it last week, but just a plan B, maybe the odd long ball. If the game's a bit stretched, maybe spraying the ball, maybe switching the ball from one touchline to the other. But the patterns of play were just very familiar. It's all very well oiled, but when you're 2-1 down, I mean, it's good. Sometimes I do look at the team and think that it's good that they're not panicking. They look like they're trying to get into their rhythm and they're trying to play, almost with that security that they know that the door will open eventually, which I kind of quite like. But
these lapses
still
concentration. It's all very well, like sort of in my mind, it feels like it's all very well that you're there, you're trying, you're probing, you're passing the ball nicely. It's all right. There's not much effect to it, but when you lose the ball and you're not switched on from a concentration point of view, then you get caught out. That to me, it's all very well doing the one thing, but you can't do the both at the same time because you're just going to get found out. And Southampton are bottom of the table, and we shouldn't be getting found out by them and being opened up like this. But nevertheless,
I have to be honest, when they scored that header, right, my first thought was, that could be the title. That could be the title there and there, because I had that sinking feeling that I'd heard a few other gooners on social media saying that when the Liverpool game happened and we sort of dropped off in the second half, but I could kind of square the Liverpool game away. I know I keep saying that, but when Kaleta headed that ball into basically an empty net unchallenged, I just kind of thought, okay, this has that sort of horrible, that dark feeling about it. But the team did sort of rouse themselves, didn't they? Obviously very, very late in the game, and then with eight minutes of extra time,
the crowd G'd themselves up. I mean, the extra time, that was a lot of it was for the Bednarek thing, I think, from the first half as well, and their goalkeeper as well. He was. It's one of my pet hates is when goalkeepers just take the piss and they take their time kicking the ball out.
Oh my God.
They were time wasting from after they went 1-0 up. It was unbelievable. But anyway, so
no, they never, players never get sort of booked for it until so late in the game anyway. But the damage has been done, and they never add that time on again. If a player delays the game by 5 minutes over the course of the 90, which goalkeepers can easily do if they're taking like 45 seconds for each goal kick, for example, then that should be 5 minutes alone just on injury time. Then you've got to add the substitutions and other injuries in. But it always works out for the team that are time wasting in the end. Although, if we ever need to do it, if we're winning 1-0 tomorrow night, I'm more than happy if Ramsdale wants to take a few extra seconds and carry the ball over to the other corner of the box and kick his boots against the post and do whatever he needs to do. But it never benefits the team who are actually trying to play and chase the result.
Balance right.
It's never commensurate. Yeah.
You've got to get the balance right, officials. They've got to try and get it like halfway between what's actually needed and what they did in the World Cup, where they were adding all this time on. But I think that was a bit much what they've been there. But okay, so we're moving on. We've had the collected card chance. Then we had the clip chance, the Jesus golden opportunity to get back in the game with a lot of time left. Well, I say a lot of time, a fair bit of time, and quite honestly, he should have put it away. It should have been 3-2 at that point, and then then what happened towards the end of the game could have actually transpired into being a winner instead of salvaging a point from the game. So it all sort of sparked into life with Ødegaard, 88 minutes, I think it was. The ball up from a throw in, nice little
with Ben White.
Yeah, nice little 1-2 with Ben White, and a great sort of. It was just a really nice finish. He sort of picked his spot, put it around the goalie, and it's sort of. I thought Ødegaard leading up to that, those sort of like 10 minutes before that, he really sort of tried to grab the game by the scruff of the neck, and he sort of tried to be the driving force because he could see that, well, this game was just going to pass us by. we were going to lose. And so he was really trying, and he, credit to him. I think he dragged us back into this in the last 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think he's got a lot to take credit for sort of pulling us through in this one and managing to at least get us a point from it. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, I mean the way he scored that goal. I mean, a lot of the goals he tends to score this season have been him arriving in the box and finishing from closer range. But I do look at that technique to score that goal. I feel like he's got that in his locker to do that more often. I think he scored a deflected goal against Brighton at home at the end of last season, towards the end of last season, where it deflected in from distance. But I don't feel like he scores enough of those goals. It was lovely to see because he's got a good technique coming in off that left. I think he should bloody try a bit more. Put it that way.
Well, we said this before. If we're thinking about like Plan Bs and Plan Cs, for take a few more pot shots. Saka's done it a couple of times, I know as well. These guys have got some. Xhaka as well. He's got a boot on him. Why not take the odd shot here and there?
It's strange. I was actually looking at some stats last week about like how many shots Premier League teams take from outside the box, and I actually noticed that our stats are actually kind of in line with a lot of other teams. So, which kind of surprised me because we always seem to generally be trying to walk the ball into the net or cut the ball back and finish from 5 or 6 yards out rather than that. Yeah. But yeah, there we go.
Yeah, and then after that, then we had the not like 2 minutes later, on the 90th minute, Saka gets the equalizer for us, and the ground just goes nuts at that point. It was lovely build-up play, clever from Trossard to sort of. I don't know if he meant to pass it along the floor, but in between, because he megged one of the Saints defenders. If he meant to do that, that's incredible skill.
I'm pretty sure he did.
That's incredible skill from Trossard to get that ball to Nelson like that, because it looked like he sort of scuffed it a bit, but then he didn't. It was just incredible.
What I liked about that pass as well, whether he meant it or not, I love the fact that he played that ball with a bit of zip. Too many times in this game, the ball was sort of just rolled from side to side or up. Yeah, but I like it when a player really passes it firmly. It passes it in a way that it's almost got a message behind it, which is we know we're moving here, we're moving up the pitch. That ball had a message attached to it, which is we're going to ramp up this intensity and this speed of play, and that's what I like about it. I want to see a bit more of that. Change the pace. The patterns are great. Sometimes you've got to be slow, but then speed it up. And I think that pass sort of it sort of almost brought everyone to life, almost inside the box to create that goal.
Well, yeah, I mean,
and a good finish as well.
There's probably an argument for Trossard to be starting more regularly than he is. I mean, again, the impact he had when he came off the bench, it was very noticeable. Problem is he's got Saka, Ødegaard, and Martinelli in front of him. So maybe we're a bit spoiled for choice there in that moment. But I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here. Maybe we play him in up front instead of Jesus. And play a sort of false 9, and then we can sort of drop back a bit more into a 4 instead of I don't know, thinking out loud, but we'll see how things go in the City game. But
he's definitely the most unlucky player in our squad in my view, because every time he comes onto the pitch. I mean, you saw the shot he took at the end that clipped the bar, and he was involved in Saka's goal as well. He does. He's a very good impact player off the bench, but I also feel that he's had so much product to his game that he deserves to be starting. And the only place I think that you could potentially start him, would probably be ahead of Martinelli or Jesus. And Jesus has been scoring goals lately, and Martinelli's probably been our best player for the last 6 weeks. I'm not sure. I'd love to find a way to somehow accommodate him in for Vieira in some way, but I just don't know what that would. Has he played central midfield, kind of, obviously advanced role, but maybe he could do that role. I feel like he does get stuck in. He can work in tight spaces. I'm just not sure if there's any sample size around that. Has he played there for Genk before? Has he played there for Brighton or for Belgium? I'm not too sure, but I do actually believe that. Yeah, obviously very different stylistically, but I do believe he could potentially play in that number 8 position. I think he does have, like I say, the ability to work in tight spaces. He's low centre of gravity, gets stuck in, can move the ball, and can obviously get forward and impact things in the final third. But whether it's a risk, if there is no sample size on that, but I think that's potentially an option. I've talked myself into it there, obviously, but I feel that that's something that we could consider, because he gets much more. I mean, you saw when he came off the bench against West Ham, he was almost playing in that position and sort of connecting with players on the left, particularly. I think there's potentially something there, but whether or not tomorrow is too much of a risk to try something new, I don't know. But
well, I mean, it depends on whether Xhaka's back or not. I mean, he was ill. I've read today that there is a potential that he may not be back. And if that's the case, and we're stuck with either Vieira coming in again, the game against City is not the time to put Vieira in and have a repeat of what happened. Well, he's just
100%.
So you might as well play your form players. I mean, it's the first rule of football, isn't it? You play your best players. I'm not saying you play him
but
in
in
goal.
theory, though, Vieira would be a lot more effective against Southampton at home at this point in time than City away, you'd say. So I don't blame Arteta for picking him, but I think now you've got to say at the moment it's not really working with him.
No.
And do with it what you will, Arteta, if you do anything. But it's going to be a bold call, actually, if Xhaka is out, what he's going to do. I mean, I'm almost thinking, do we kind of now talk a little bit about the game tomorrow? Because I think, we've seen City, we're not going to have Nathan Ake there, but they play with just 3 defenders now and a 2-man midfield. And I'm kind of wondering if we could have Jorginho alongside Partey and try and match them up with a back 3. Because I've noticed that he tried the false 9 with it. Smith Rowe against City, Arteta is prepared to throw a few curveballs out there, it seems, when we play against those guys to try and keep them guessing. But I wonder what sort of your thoughts around that. Like, let's assume Xhaka's not playing on Wednesday. What would you actually do if you were the boss?
I mean, the Jorginho one is not a bad shout. If you put him and Partey in midfield, I mean, it probably gives Partey a bit more of a license to roam a bit instead of sitting, because I think Jorginho will be the player to sit because he hasn't got the mobility and athleticism of Partey. So I think Jorginho would probably be. I would prefer to see him in there instead of Vieira, because I think Vieira will just get. I think he'll get bullied. I just don't see. I think he's had an okay first season, but I think he needs to. If you remember what Nketiah did, I remember I saw a picture, or it was in a magazine showing how he teamed up with a certain personal trainer or whatever, and he'd gone from like skinny sort of youth sort of player to bulked up, potential first teamer sort of thing. And Vieira needs to kind of do the same sort of thing. The physicality will just catch him out. And tomorrow's game, I think, will be one of those games where I don't think he should get on the pitch. I know Trossard isn't the most physical of players, but he's played in the Premier League. He understands it, and he's hit the ground.
He's quite nuggety, though, isn't he? He's quite. Yeah. He's not. I don't think he's. I mean, you can see he's got a certain bulk to him that probably he wouldn't have if he hadn't played in the Premier League. Let's say. I mean, yeah, he's not someone you'd fancy in a jelly wrestling match, but I think he does. I think he does use his body well. He uses what he's been given basically, better. And I think Vieira just looks lost.
Yeah,
and he's. We're going to need to be more defensively solid, I think, against City. So I would potentially look at Trossard, or I'm kind of leaning towards matching up with City, to be honest, because they're obviously playing Stones and Rodri as two-man pivot, and Georgie. I mean, when sphincters are twitching, when we're in the business end of the season, isn't this what we bought Jorginho for? I mean, I thought this is.
I think
a guy who's won the Champions League, he's won the Euros, he's played in big matches. These are the kind of men, and I use the word men, like proper, physical leaders in the middle of the park there who can, when they're playing a tough game, this should be tailor-made for him, I would have thought.
The magnitude of the game tomorrow, because I truly believe that the whole season rests on tomorrow. I think if I know we've sort of skipped ahead here from the Southampton game and our sort of afterthoughts and such, but what is crucial tomorrow is that we don't get beat. I still feel that if we come away from that ground, even with a draw, it's still possible. It's unlikely, but I don't think it's any more unlikely than it is now if we come away with a draw tomorrow. Because obviously, of course, I want to win, but it's imperative that we don't get beat. If we get beat, it's done in my view at that point.
I want us to play. I don't want us to play for the draw because that can be dangerous. But I want us to have a good solid base. Which again, I don't. To be honest, if I'm being really honest, I can't see us having a solid base because there's no evidence of us showing that in the last handful of games. We have been losing, but I think if we try and bolster that midfield up with a bit more solidity to protect, the fact that we've got a few injuries at the back, and use that as a good foundation and build from there. It's still, when we do get the opportunity to go forward, I want to see us still do it. Because I think with City, it's impossible just to sit there, crowding the box, getting them sort of, playing crosses in, heading it out for 90 minutes. I think eventually you'll crack. So we're going to have to give them something to think of. And I think potentially with Laporte playing, Laporte's pretty decent player to have on the bench, obviously, but he's going to have been very rusty. I'd like us to try and exploit that with Saka on him potentially. And when there is the opportunity to, I want Jesus and Zinchenko revved up for this one like you wouldn't believe. But I personally would just try and button down that midfield a bit. I think for a game, I think for the next kind of game where we're playing a slightly more winnable opposition, I'd actually be quite happy to see Trossard tried in that 8 position. The more I've talked myself into it here massively, but I think for this game, I'd have no issue at all if Arteta started with Jorginho and Partey holding the midfield. Because even, do you know what? Even if Xhaka, it's a controversial opinion, but even if Xhaka was fit, I'd kind of think we have been unwell. He's probably might be a little bit weak. I don't know. He might not be quite ready. I think this could be a good game for Jorginho, in my view.
Championing the Jorginho flag.
I just think he's played in big games. He knows what it takes to win. This is a massive, massive game. And let's be honest, Partey's struggled the last 2 games. The defence doesn't look good. Zinchenko's been exposed a bit more. He's having to play left back more as opposed to that inverted midfield role. So I just think having and I think then if you match up with City in that midfield, potentially that's something that we could do.
It's not a bad shout. I'm inclined to agree with you. I think the Jorginho, Partey, Odegaard trio in midfield is probably the way to go tomorrow. It's not negative to the point where you go, right, we're setting up for a draw, but what you're doing is, the whistle blows, it's 0-0, and at that point, obviously everything can. I think there will be goals tomorrow in the game. But it's not to give away too much. We're still going to have the attacking players there. The three, the golden triangle, if you like, of Odegaard, Martinelli, and Saka. And then with then you got Jesus up front. But I think if they're playing, there's going to be enough quality on the pitch to cause City problems. Those 3 players I mentioned just now, that they've been on form all season. They're our best players throughout the season. So I think that I think Partey and Jorginho is probably the way to go. Definitely.
Yeah. And maybe not play the back 3. Maybe still stick with our back 4. But I guess if the game is going well for us, you could potentially you could shuffle Ben White across, and maybe Saka as a right wing back or something like that to try and if you've got a slender lead, that's something that Saka has actually done a pretty good job at wing back when he first broke into the team and at full back. So I know it's not ideal, but if you're winning 2-1 or whatever it is with 10 minutes to go, then I wouldn't be against that. I think with City, they're such a good side that any kind of lead you just try and clasp onto as you get to the latter stages. But I guess post-game thoughts on Southampton, though. Obviously, I think you'll probably agree with me that it is obviously 2 points, 2 points dropped, even though we salvaged something at the end. I mean, the glass half full brigade would probably go, we managed to get a point still. But for me, you could say that in certain grounds, but not Southampton at home.
I was exhausted and devastated. They were the two things that spring to mind, because I've been put through the ringer basically. There were chances at the end to sort of win it. A couple of half chances here. Trossard at the bar, and then Nelson had a chance, and then Partey. I mean, it summed it up. The last big game, the balloon that he tried to just gone.
Him and Harry Kane's penalty are basically orbiting Saturn as we speak.
Yeah.
So it's just absolutely ridiculous. But
there were chances. But it was just, God. If you had heart problems, you'd be in trouble during that game. Honestly, it was. It was one of those games that it was just all over the place. It was like ping pong going on in that ball. In that box. I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but I mean, I was thinking to myself, what must Henry and Vieira be thinking? 'Cause they were in the stands watching the game, sat next to each other. I don't think it would have happened if they were there on the pitch at the time. So, but
I know that was an interesting point, wasn't it? Because they had those two, and they had Sol Campbell was there as well.
Yeah,
I noticed. So it's kind of interesting that these players, these legends, sort of get invited back to the club at this point. I don't know whether it's the kind of, whether there's a message behind it. It's interesting that the three of them came at once to one game, and all kind of I feel like maybe they're invited back to kind of almost
I love it.
Inspire the players. But I mean, the only positive I can really take from this game though is we have the players are fighting. The one thing we know is that they've not thrown the towel in their mind. The fact that they have pulled the game back to 3-3 and had a chance or two at the end. I have to admit though, if we'd won that game 4-3, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd feel buzzing, but I'd also be feeling the optics behind that. Like I said at the top of this one, is that we're relying on sort of last minute stuff to get over the line. You can't do that as often as probably what we've been doing, if I'm honest. But I do like the fact the team are showing character. They don't know when they're beaten. They do dig in. So that's obviously a great thing, and it should put us in good stead, at least for Wednesday. The players are going to put up a fight.
We can only hope. Yeah, I think we were a bit unlucky in the end not to win the Southampton game. With the chances we had at the end, it just needs to be a bit more clinical. So yeah, looking ahead, I mean, we've discussed the big one, which is tomorrow night at City. Then we got Chelsea at home. Then we go away to Newcastle, which is not going to be easy. And then another lovely, nice peach of a game, Brighton at home. I think there'll be that's going to be a tough game. So yes, bold prediction time, I think.
Yes. Okay. Well,
I got it.
You've had a mare. You're now on a hat trick of over promising and under delivering, shall we say? But the mental health charity of choice will be thanking Lucky Stars at Jason Zaguna on a night like tonight, because you predicted a resounding 4-0 win. Obviously, the score was 3-0, and I was right on my one, because I said Saka to score and come back to form against Southampton. So he's obviously done that. So yeah, happy to see him getting back on the score sheet. So give me your prediction for tomorrow.
Am I allowed to just say a draw?
You're allowed to say what you like.
I think it'll be a draw tomorrow.
Okay. You're not tempted to nail your colours to the mast on a score or a scoreline? You don't have to.
Not convincingly. I'm going to go for I think a draw.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to nail it. But I think maybe like a score draw. I think.
I've put a 2-2 draw.
Oh, you've gone for a
City.
score.
I've actually gone for a score. I've decided to roll the dice.
I mean,
a little bit, because I think it will be. I think history has shown that whenever we played them, there has been often more goals for them than against us. I mean, if I'm being honest, I think we will lose tomorrow. If I'm being completely honest, but obviously I'm desperately hoping and praying that we don't. But in the interest of trying to be as positive as I can, I don't think we definitely won't keep a clean sheet. I'm almost convinced of that.
Yeah, I don't think
but I'd love to see maybe if we can get the game turned into like away from their robotic, drab way of playing football and turn it into a bit of a game of basketball, a little bit of a maybe our emotional way of being, and this might actually could add a bit of jeopardy into it. I don't know. Might mean we fall apart defensively, but if we can add a bit of chaos factor and emotion and fight, and the last thing I want is City just start stroking the ball around and playing their patterns.
Yeah.
I think we've got to get into them. But I've put a 2-2 draw.
Okay.
That's the best you're going to get.
I'm going to go just draw, because I can't predict the score. But I do. I think what needs to happen tomorrow is that we treat it, and I know we went out of the cup to them, but we need to treat tomorrow as a one-off cup game. You think of the sort of cup games where lower league teams turn up and they really go for it and they have a go at the sort of top tier team because they've got nothing to lose. I think we have to behave if we want to win the game. That's how we've got to approach the game, and that's how we've got to do it, because it is all down to tomorrow in my mind. If we win tomorrow, I think we've got a really good chance that the mental boost that will give the players. If we lose tomorrow, it will have the exact opposite, and I think we'll fall off a cliff.
If we draw tomorrow, they're still favourites, but it means that it's just obviously balanced a lot closer. They'll still be slight favourites, but it will be a bit more in the balance, because they'll still have 2 games behind, and they'll still be 5 points behind, 2 games in hand. So they will still have the upper hand. They will still have the upper hand, and we do have harder games. But it still keeps things bubbling along. Do you know what? I don't think we will win, but I really do think we need to win. If we win, that could be the springboard to. I think that would then trigger a strong end to the season. If we put a really gritty defensive performance in and win 2-1 or 3-2 or something like that, even if we don't keep a clean sheet, I think that's like a crack addict's bloody injection of something nice into their veins, like straight off the bat. And I think that's the kind of thing that could actually propel us, to the title. I think if we draw, I think we'll get confidence from it, but I think City will still be favourites. And obviously, if we lose, it's not all over at that point, but it's not great. But a draw, I think a win for us carries us.
A draw doesn't change anything in my view. I also think that the idea that City go and win all of their games, it is possible, but that's what they would need to do to win the championship. I think there are some games in there that they may possibly drop. And if they drop something, it leaves the door open for us to then get back in front, But again, I know this is all permutations, and it all depends on how we then respond. And if we're able to sort of, put home victories, when we're in front and lots of ifs and buts and whatever to come. But I'm nervous about tomorrow. I can't remember. It's been a while since there's been a game of this size, I think. That there's been so much riding on.
But the thing for me is, like, if I'm an Arsenal player tonight, how often have we been in this position before? It's something for me to be relished. I mean, the footballing world is going to be watching you, and imagine if the players use this as like a fillip to kind of say, right, we want to show people what we're really about. This is the game to do it. It's exciting that we're in this position. These are the games players want to be involved in. They don't want to be playing when they're, don't want to be in 8th position hoping they get a Europa League spot at the end of it. They want to be in these kind of games, and I hope that actually gives them a sense of excitement. I think we see the kind of player. I think it can go one of either way with players. I think lesser players who are not sort of strong character probably would see a game like this and go, "Oh no, it's all a bit too much." But I think certain players who've got leadership and believe in their quality and confidence in themselves, they see these games in a totally different way, almost like okay, this is my moment now. I'm going to show. I'm not going to leave that pitch without showing what I'm about or what this team's about. And I hope it's the latter. I mean, I appreciate we're not going into the game in the. If this game was held in its original spot, I think we'd potentially be having a much more different discussion tonight. But I think if the players can try somehow and realise we haven't lost in the last 3 games, we are still undefeated in 10. It's not a complete write-off, and we are going to have a few players out, but we just need one gargantuan effort, really well organised, well coached, well drilled game plan, and have a good defensive base to work from, and then see because we are going to need to score tomorrow to get a draw. But I can see us scoring. I just can't see us.
I have
keeping a clean sheet.
I have one question for you. Who's going to have the Michael Thomas moment tomorrow?
Oh God, I did actually have a little fantasy moment today where I was sitting back and I was thinking I could just imagine. I actually had a visualization of
it's up for grabs now.
Jesus running through and just him he was on the right hand side for some reason in my little mind's eye, and he sort of burst through in the channel and he just fired it into the bottom corner across Edison, and he celebrated crazily. He didn't do the Walcott thing where I'm sorry to score against you. He loved it. And it was like him saying, "I'm the number 9. I'm going to say him because for him, it's not just a game for him. It's the chance for him to step out of the shadow he was cast in at City. And I'd love him to be number 9, playing up the middle for the Arsenal, and either scoring the winner or having a great game, getting a goal. And I think he should be a kind of player tomorrow. Be looking to go. I was a little bit on the fringes up here before, and I'm going to show you what I'm about. He's got a lot to prove tomorrow, and I think he'll rise to the occasion. That's my prediction. Who's your Mickey Thomas?
Martinelli.
Don't say Fabio Vieira.
No, it's not going to be him. I hope he doesn't play. I think Martinelli. I can see him getting on the score sheet. I think he's in such a rich vein of form, and he's got that drive and determination about him. And I think he seems. He's going to. I mean, they're all going to be fired up. If they're not fired up for this game, they shouldn't be playing football. This is why you play football. So, I think Martinelli might do something tomorrow. We'll see. We'll see. I think that wraps up today's show, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. Good stuff. So all that remains is just to say thank you guys for watching. Leave us your comments and questions. Remember to hit like and subscribe. And next time we see you, we'll either be crying or we'll be celebrating. Until then, I will see you later.
Bye, everyone.
See you later. Bye-bye. Bye.